SimWorld presents Around the Table with E and the Fat Man.
What's up, everybody? It's me, it's the B.O.B., and I'm here with my man, E. E, how are you doing today?
Hey, that is indeed me right here, and I'm doing well, Bob.
That is awesome. Well, that is E. I am the Fat Man, and this is Around the Table. This is where we talk about whatever we want in the sports world. Sometimes throw in some of Eric's great pop culture references. And today we're going to be talking about the top incoming, well, I won't say top incoming recruits, but the most excited incoming recruits for next season for SimWorld Hoops, or what will be known as SimWorld Prep. And I guess I will let you jump off with this one, Eric. Who's one of your most exciting players that you want to see next season?
Yeah, we each got a few here to talk about, and I'm going to start it off with somebody who very recently has made a splash in SimWorld, although he's on my radar before that, and that is Christian Jamuri.
Okay.
You may have recently seen him exploding on the scene of one of the pickup games, going airborne, going well above the rim to finish. But Christian, 16-year-old right now, 6'5", 180-pounder out of Portland. He's, as we saw in that recent, and there's a highlight up on Discord. And by the way, that's discord.gg/SimWorld NBA if you want to go on there and check it out. He's a really good post-shot creator. Defense is still a little bit of a work in progress, but with Jamuri, what I really kind of see him developing into is a good two-way player. Somebody who, is a force kind of down low on offense, but will also improve his defense, will grow into that role. Speaking of growing, 6'5", 180 pounds right now, really good size for a, sort of undersized big wing player. But I suspect he's going to grow.
Yeah.
I think you're going to end up with somebody at the end of the day who is 6'7", 6'8" at least, probably 200, 210 pounds. And just with the athleticism and the offensive shot creation ability that he brings in, who he kind of reminds me of, Bob, and for anybody who was involved in the first season of SimWorld, somebody that we called Q, Quincy Henderson, Southeast Select, playing down there with Trey, one of the leaders of that squad in their first year, and just a long-armed, long body, just vicious athletic defender, also a dunker. Quincy was in the dunk contest his first year.
Oh, yeah.
I can see that for Jamuri in the future, too. It reminds me of that kind of player. I think you're going to see the West Coast schools fighting over him. You've obviously got the two squads up there around the Seattle area, and then up and down California, even Rocky Mountain. I think there's going to be a lot of people recruiting Christian pretty hard. I think for a very good reason, because he's going to be Stacey Ogman, throw an old name out there, a Plastic Man clone. I think once he hits the SimWorld level, we'll see if I'm right about that. But I'm excited to see more of Christian Jamuri.
Oh, for sure. I think that's a great pick. Well, I'm going to go to the other side of the country, and I'm going to have a more obvious pick. This is a kid who I'll compare him to a player this season. I think it's going to be SimWorld Prep's clone of Trey Hyman. So I'm going to go with Trey Wells in the South region, out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, standing at 6'9", 260 his entire game. And I know that Trey Hyman is not necessarily where he would like to be right now, which is great because he's still a top 10 player.
Right.
But I see Tyree Wells being a mirror image of Trey Hyman, and I think that he's going to, I hope that he's going to continue his play as he has in the pickup games. My biggest concern, and it's a big concern, is looking at a player like Richard Hennessy. His first pickup game and only pickup game, he was an absolute monster. And this is going to be, I'm just saying this for all the kids that we're talking about today. He was an absolute monster, and he's just kind of breezing along now with Oceana. It's like, what happened to that 7-foot monster dominating on offense and defense? But as long as Tyree Wells has a good head on his shoulders and gets in with a good coach, Wells is going to be I think, a great player. And I do think I can see him easily jumping up, being that guy who came in, he's new. We're not too sure about him because all we've seen is some pickup games, but I can see him jumping up into the top 20, top 15 very early on in the season and potentially being with a lot of the star players that are leaving, especially at the big position. Like Tyson Simpson won't be here next year. Lorenzo Phenom won't be here next year. So I think that Tyree Wells can be probably one of the top 5 bigs of SimWorld Hoops next season.
I like the pick. It's an interesting pick, Bob. The thing about it is, there's another player who I have on my list, and I'll segue right into him right now, who Trey Hyman was also top of mind for me when I was making this pick. I didn't go for Wells, however, but it is somebody else who I think has the ability to kind of do what Trey does somewhat, maybe, compete with him on a similar level. And for me, that's somebody else that you might have seen in some of the pickup games, Jaquan Johnson, another 16-year-old. Jaquan's a beast. He's 6'7", 265 pounds right now.
Yeah.
So, obviously he's massive, he's wide, he's a load down there. Again, we're talking about young kids. So even though, Christian Jamuri, 6'5", pretty good size, Jaquan Johnson, 6'7", pretty good size, I do think he'll grow some. I think he'll put on another inch or two at least. So you could be looking at a 6'9", 6'10". Compare that to Trey Hyman, who we've all watched this year. It was, I think, 6'10", 240, maybe 245. But the thing when you watch Trey out there that really impresses me, and I mentioned this in the last game I called that Trey and Barry were in, is that you just sort of physically watch Trey take the court.
Yeah.
You don't really expect what's sort of the most amazing thing just from eyeballing, watching his game is that he does a little bit of everything. Obviously, Trey gets down low, he scores inside, and, he rebounds, blocks shots. But he's also a good passer. He can dribble the ball up when he gets the rebound. He does some things where necessarily at first glance, first time you saw him, you wouldn't expect that big man to do that. Quan can do a lot of the same things. And again, we've seen him some in some pickup games already, and encourage everybody to either, again, go to our Discord or our YouTube channel to find those and watch some of his footage. But for somebody his size, Jaquan's even a heavier load at a young age than Trey Hyman is. Kid is almost shockingly mobile. He's just got really good athleticism. And actually, in the most recent pickup action he's been out there, I watched some of this. What really sort of impressed me were two things. One you might expect or almost take for granted, and that is using his size well. And he does. Jaquan knows how to use that big body to create some space. He's really good in terms of pick and roll games. I expect we're going to see the pick and roll being a huge part of him once he does hit the SimWorld level. But the other thing that really surprises you is that he's flashed what looks like a high level hoops IQ. In some of these pickup games too. Now, I don't want to get carried away with stuff that happens in a game that doesn't mean anything, and in fact, it's only even 3-on-3. But I really like what I've seen from Jaquan. Again, somebody who I think teams should already be salivating over. Maybe go ahead and drop his kid a line because you're going to want him on your team next year if you're a SimWorld coach.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. You can't teach size. And when you have some of these monstrous kids, regardless of what they can or can't do, if you can get yourself a 6'7", 260-pound or a 6'9", 260-pound kid, get them. Because you cannot at all teach size. For me, I think my next one, I'm going to go with, he has not announced a transition to SimWorld Prep for next season. However, he is going to be a junior in high school. He goes to Amelia Academy. His name's Ibrahim Gaddy. His game...
Tell last name again?
Ibrahim Gaddy.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Not on my radar, but you just put it on my radar, Bob.
I just think that I think he would be. He's a really interesting player, in my opinion. He at 6'9", he, with some of the kids that we have in SimWorld Hoops, 6'9" it's huge, but obviously we have our 7-footers that have been dominating the season. But this is a kid who he kind of reminds me of, I'm gonna butcher his name. He was with Kentucky. He's been with Kentucky forever. Oscar. It was Oscar T.
Oscar T. Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of him. Again, he's going into his junior year of high school. He is currently averaging, and again, still, this was as a sophomore, first in the nation in rebounds with 24.1, first in the nation in blocks per game with 11, and he was averaging 20 points a game. I just think he would be an extremely interesting player if he were to make the jump to SimWorld Prep. I just think he would be an interesting player to see if his... is it because he's playing against lower talent in high school and hasn't really run into the upper talent in SimWorld Prep? Or is he really that good of a player? For a player who is, again, he was a sophomore. His school did not do great. They were 5-14 on the season. They were ranked 398th in the state, if that tells you anything. If I did a deeper dive, I wouldn't be surprised if his 21.9 points per game, maybe that was all they were scoring. But for a kid who, again, 21.9 points per game, 24.1 rebounds a game, 11 blocks a game, averaging a triple-double with the blocks in there, he just seems like a very interesting player to me that I would love to see. Like, there's other ones that have not made their announcements either. Like, I know that, well, just in case you have anybody else on your list, I'll save my honorable mentions for the end.
Oh, so kind, Bob, so kind. And you are indeed correct. I too, there's somebody out there who, and there's been a few of these players who have slipped into the SimWorld Hoops universe this season, and I think that's a trend that will continue. And somebody I would like to come into the game, hopefully, getting in his ear about SimWorld, is Cooper Flagg. Flagg. Cooper Flagg. Cooper, originally from Maine. He's a 6'8", sort of, he has some guard-like skills, but plays forward basically. He'll be going into a 17-year-old season. Cooper's originally from Maine, but now he plays for Monteverde Academy, which is out of Florida. And if the Monteverde name sounds a little bit familiar, that's because in the recent past, they've produced some players like D'Angelo Russell, Jay Barrett, also out of there. Very, very recently, Hood Schifino out of Indiana came out of there, and Malik Renew, who was a freshman in Indiana last year, will be a sophomore this season. Another Monteverde kid. So absolutely loaded with talent down there. And Cooper fits in really well. I think he played 1 year in Maine, where he won the state championship in Maine and was named Maine's Player of the Year, regardless of age or high school class. Went on down to Florida to play with a little bit more high level talent on a team that's certainly loaded with that. And boy, he's, obviously he was good when he was even younger, got on people's radar and he was even younger, but in very recent times in some high level competition, he has just been flashing some unbelievable talent. I mean, putting up 30-point, nearly 20 rebound kind of games. Again, Peach Jam sort of competitions and other high level, prep events. He's just super, super skilled, really kind of can do it all. Reminds you, and just because he's got that size and with the, the silky skills and educated game he has, reminds you, almost throw it back to the 1980s when you had Bird and Magic out there doing things the guys didn't think guys 6'8", 6'9" should be able to do. And that's Cooper Flagg. I think he would be an absolutely rock solid addition to the SimWorld universe. And before I throw it back over to before I throw it back over to you, Bob, I do have an honorable mention too. It's kind of a wild card, off the wall honorable mention, which is, I was going through looking at players when we get ready to do the show, and there's somebody who kind of jumped off the page to me a little bit when I was looking who's out there, and this isn't most likely somebody for next year. This is somebody who's already 17, getting ready to turn 18, probably getting ready to go on into college. But it's a SimWorld veteran, was fighting for played in the game last year, was fighting for a spot on a roster beginning of this year. Was one of those players that just didn't quite find a home. And to my surprise, has sat out there available ever since, is still available right now. What I am telling you is this player should be good enough to come off of a bench this season and help a team win this year. So I know there's not much time left, but coaches anywhere out there, if you got somebody where maybe it'd be an addition by subtraction, getting rid of a guy, or somehow you have a spot on your team, I highly recommend taking a hard look at the one and only Kenny May. 17, as I mentioned. He's 6 foot. He's a pure point guard. Look, he's not a pure shooter, and he's not going to score for you. He's not going to put up 10 or 12 points a game. Probably more like 4 or 5. But he will also be that solid quarterback coming off the bench, second string point guard who is going to keep things solid, run the show, make sure the wheels don't fall off. Kid that can get out there for 10 or 15 minutes easy per game and is not going to hurt you. And in fact, he's going to help you win. Solid distribution, solid defense. Kenny May. Kind of can't believe he didn't play this year. So wanted to give him an honorable mention shout too. So throw it back over to you, Bob.
Yeah.
So,
no, this isn't, I'm going to throw some honorable mentions out there too, just based on your, I don't know what I want to call it. The veterans from SimWorld Hoops last season that aren't on teams. There are some players that I am very surprised didn't stick on teams. I mean, JJ Ruff got cut. He got picked up and cut early in the season. You have players like Sacchetti. There's so many players that I'm surprised. VJ George, I really thought he was going to be a monster. Raheem Dandridge. It's just, there are so many players that it just shows you how much talent there is in SimWorld Hoops with some of these names that are just sitting there that have not found teams again. But hey, it is what it is, I guess.
Those names all surprised me too. Raheem Dandridge, I thought was going to be, one of the stars on Gotham 5 this season. So he didn't make the team. VJ George bounced around from a couple squads. I thought he was going to be a great addition anywhere he landed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where he landed is at home on his couch. So yeah.
Well, for my final pick for exciting recruits for next season, I'm going to jump back. It was an earlier in the season pickup game. Well, I say earlier in the season pickup game. It was last month. One that I'm excited. I'm going to jump overseas, and I'm going to go with North Korea's Sun Chong-gu. I just feel like athletically, he's so athletic. And while he might not be the greatest defender or anything, he can shoot, he can get to the rim. I think what sticks out in my mind the most, and what probably sticks out in most people's mind, is his behind-the-back dunk that he threw down in his pickup game. But he just, he got a quick first step, just like Tyree Wells. I'm going to jump back to Tyree Wells for a second. You
got a new pet cat. All right,
I know. As big as he is, I can see him being that. He's not going to be, because you never want the ball in the big's hands coming up the court. But he's a player like Ben Simmons that I think could probably get away with playing all 5 positions because of his his athleticism. I think that he's a player that could do that. Now, jumping back to Chong-gu, I don't think he could do that because you don't want to see a 6'3", 6'4" guy driving in on a 7-footer ever. But yeah, no, his quick speed, or his quick first step, his ability to attack the basket, his ability to hit shots. I think I'm really excited to see where Chong-gu lands. I would be surprised if some of these top international recruits stay overseas, but it just because of the lack of winning that the international teams have done this season. However, I think that us going back to the way that we're going to be doing things next season for the playoffs and everything, there's incentive to stay. But there are some teams that I do think could really, really benefit from a player like him. I mean, you look at what the reigning Trays did with Kayvon Jackson and things like that. I do think that there are some teams out there that on the American side that would absolutely love to have a player like Chungu if he decides to not stay over there.
Yeah, sure. Well, we've seen some international stars come over, play for some domestic squads, even this scene, like Martin Genov taking his talents to Texas. So, no, that would not surprise me either. And I like the pick. I like all your picks, Bob. We had no overlaps today. Always pleasing when that happens.
Absolutely.
And good. I guess we're at the wrap-up portion. Good show today, though. Good selections, and the future is bright with a lot of these kids coming in.
Oh yeah, and I'll throw one more honorable mention out there, and I'm going to cheat because it's going to be a double dipper. Someone needs to reach out to those to those Boozer twins and see if they want to commit to play for SimWorld Prep next season.
I like it. And speaking of twins, maybe we get the Cavender twins in one of our pickup games. That would be okay too.
There you go. Well, everybody, we appreciate you listening as always, and we hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
See you next weekend, folks.